Welcome back, everybody. It's me, Sabrina. JL is back with me again, being my main man. As always and forever, we are with the thought loop, but on the sidebar. We enjoy discussing everything inside out and in between. Please be sure to check out the rest of the team because we love discussing it all. Okay, so let's lay out the basics here. Luigi Mangione, this Ivy League grad, right? Bright future, promising guy on paper, a kind of golden child stereotype. And then, boom, he allegedly stalks and murders a CEO in cold blood. What went so wrong?
Yeah, it's wild. This kid, it's like he walked straight out of a Netflix series. I mean, Ivy League education, private high school, supposedly brilliant. And now, the face of what some people are calling corporate rebellion. But yo, there's layers to this, Sabrina, like heavy ones.
Totally. But here's the thing that boggles my mind. There's this whole faction of people practically idolizing him, like Robin Hood vibes for some, right? Is this, I don't know, society just being frustrated with the healthcare system? Or are we glorifying
A dude who allegedly shot a CEO in the back.
exactly?
I mean, it's deep. The healthcare system, it's got a lot of bones to pick, no doubt. Folks out here paying premiums so high they can't even afford to make a claim, you feel me? It's personal for people. Anger like that, it doesn't just like sit there, it marinates, festers. And Mangione looks like he tapped into that frustration, played the whole I'm going to expose the system card.
But let's get real. Is that enough to justify?
Nah,
No. Yeah, I mean, there's zero excuse here, but okay, you read those journal entries, right? The ones where he's like planning this step by step.
yeah, the meticulous planning angle is disturbing. Like, ain't no spur of the moment passion crime here. This man was detailed and cold about it, too.
And somehow people still see him as this almost, I don't even know, heroic figure. But then Jamal, doesn't this just say more about us as a society than it does about him?
It does. It really does. I think it's part desperation for change and partly how we mythologize folks who buck the system, you know? We paint them in graffiti on walls, make hashtags. But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
What gets lost in that shine is the dude allegedly killed someone. There's a real victim here, Brian Thompson, right? A man with a family.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking, but Jamal, there's this weird tension because it's almost like Mangione is holding up a mirror to these systemic failures. Like the healthcare system isn't exactly spotless either, right?
No doubt. But that mirror ain't justification for taking a life. And yet, you can see how the blurred lines of frustration, morality, and, I don't know, desperation might make folks sympathize.
It's complicated, really complicated.
It's complicated for sure, Sabrina. But when you look at the evidence against Mangione, it's hard to ignore how stacked it is. I mean, they have surveillance footage placing him at the scene. They recovered his DNA and those bullet casings with messages: defend, depose, deny. That's not just random, it's deliberate, calculated.
Yeah, and those journal entries, chilling. He literally lays out the steps. It's like reading the blueprint of someone's darkest thoughts. How does anyone look at that and think, yeah, maybe he's the good guy here?
It's crazy, but it happens. And here's where jury nullification comes in. You've got this dude on trial. The evidence is damning, but if 12 people in a box decide, hey, society failed him, so he's not guilty, what then?
Wait, isn't that terrifying though? You're telling me a jury could just ignore the facts, ignore the actual law because they feel bad for the guy?
Yeah, it's a loophole, no doubt. And in emotionally charged cases like this one, public sentiment can push jurors in wild directions. They might see Mangione as symbolic instead of just a person who, let's keep it real, allegedly committed murder.
But isn't that dangerous? Like if we let emotions drive the verdict instead of the evidence, what does that do to the whole concept of justice?
It muddies it. On one hand, you've got a system that's supposed to be impartial, right? Evidence, law, facts. But then there's this human element. People want to fight for what feels right, not necessarily what is right. And when that collides with big societal frustrations, man, things spiral.
Okay, let's talk about those frustrations. The anti corporate sentiment is huge, Jamal. People see this healthcare giant, the CEO, and they think that's the villain. And then here comes Mangione, like this alleged vigilante. It kind of feeds right into the narrative, doesn't it?
Exactly. You look back at history, cases where public outcry favored defendants who were seen as defying the system. This isn't new. The healthcare industry's got some skeletons in its closet, no doubt. But justifying murder? That's a stretch.
And yet here we are, people donating thousands to his defense fund. This isn't just about Mangione anymore, it's bigger.
Way bigger. It's a trial of public opinion clashing with legal justice. And I gotta say, Sabrina, as messy as it all is, it's a snapshot of where we stand as a society.
Jamal, the more I think about this case, the more I wonder, is our reaction to Mangione really about the evidence, or is it more about the story we want to believe? I mean, is he the criminal the system paints him as, or the symbol people have made him out to be?
Yeah, that's real. Narratives, they're powerful. People, we don't just see events, We try to fit them into some bigger framework, a story that makes sense to us. And when that story resonates, it can override a whole lot of facts. Like Mangione's story speaks to frustration, maybe even anger, with systems we feel trapped in.
Exactly. It's like we want so badly to root for the underdog, for someone to fight back. And yeah, I get that emotion. I really do. But doesn't simplifying it into this hero versus villain thing miss all the, well, gray areas?
For sure. Life ain't black and white. It's messy. And that mess, that's where most of us live. But Sabrina, society, and I mean like all of us, we love clean stories. Rebels, villains, somebody to root for or against. But how often do we stop to ask, does this narrative actually line up with reality?
Not often enough. And that's kind of sad, isn't it? Like, for Mangione supporters, it's not just about him as a person anymore. It's about everything he symbolizes. And for his critics, it's the opposite. It's like he's reduced to being this cold blooded criminal. But who's actually trying to see him as fully human?
Hmm, that's a deep question. And honestly, it's this tug of war, personal motivations, societal pressures, all that stuff gets muddled in the mix. I mean, take jury nullification, right? There's a reason it exists. But when we let emotion run the show, man, the line between justice and bias gets blurry fast.
And maybe that says more about us as a society than it does about Manjone himself, like what we focus on, what we're willing to excuse or ignore. It's all shaped by how we define good, bad, and everything in between. But at what cost?
That's it, though, the cost. People see Mangione's act as this reflection of broader frustrations, healthcare, inequality. But it's still an act. Someone lost their life. And that's the part of the story we can't, glaze over, no matter how compelling the narrative feels.
Right. At the end of the day, he's not just the symbol or whatever. He's a person who made choices, just like Brian Thompson was a person too. And I guess the moral of this whole conversation is we can't let our ideals blind us to the complexity of the truth.
Truth's hard, Sabrina. It asks us to hold things that don't always sit easy together. Empathy for the frustrations that drive people, and accountability for what those frustrations lead them to do. But I'll say this, the more we avoid these gray areas in our stories, the less we really learn?
Absolutely. And with that, Jamal, I think we've untangled about as much of this as two people can in one podcast episode.
Ha, I think you're right. But hey, conversations like this, they're a step, a messy, imperfect step, but still forward.
And I'll take that. Anyway, thanks for hashing this out with me, Jamal. Always a pleasure, even when it gets messy.
Same here, Sabrina. Always a pleasure.
All right, listeners, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for sticking with us through the twists and turns. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.